Hello there. As you can probably see from my wall and also from some of the videos I've been posting, I've been really involved in looking at the elemental archetype system that Tamar de Jong and his co-workers came up with in the 1960s, and which people have been working on since then. So it's a very interesting system, but I just wanted to talk about one thing today, and that's to do with um, just ideas about the elements um, and where they come in our progress, and in a sense, our sort of evolution as human beings, really. Um, I guess I could actually use this diagram to try and show some of it. Now, okay, the diagram here, we've got all these different archetypes. The archetypes have two elements each, yeah? And amongst these archetypes, there are four which are cardinal archetypes. So this is the cardinal of fire. It's actually fire and air. This is the cardinal of earth. It's earth and water. This is the cardinal of air. It's air and fire. And this is the cardinal of water. It's water and earth. So those are the cardinals. Now, if you've been involved in this, you'll probably be aware that we have quite a strong sense of what the nature of fire consciousness and water consciousness is. Yeah. Um, in some senses, our sense of fire consciousness and water consciousness have maybe got a little bit stereotyped, I think. Yeah. Um, the thing that the thing that has really come home to me is that none of the elements are good or bad. None of the elemental archetypes are good or bad. None of them are better than any others. Yeah, at any time. The thing here is, the thing is not to have more of one element or more of another element, but in fact to have whatever one has, elementally speaking, in a good conditioning, to act in its virtue. Now, what has occurred to me while I've been filling in this circle and looking at it and reflecting on it is that Mother Nature here, which is the Earth archetype, is has a tremendously primordial quality to it. It's ancient, it's pre-human, very much. In fact, they're all pre-human. You see, air and fire are also pre-human. I mean, what do we think of as the genesis of our universe? We think of it in terms of, well, we don't really know, but we think of it in terms of the Big Bang, explosions. The stars exploding, superheated gases, etc., etc. So it's actually quite. It would be quite incorrect to think that, for instance, any of these are not in fact primordial. But in terms of our life on Earth, Mother Nature feels very, very, very primordial. Now, what really occurs to me is that we have emerged as human beings from what you could call our prior animal state. And when we look back on that prior animal state, we see Mother Nature and we see the Enchantress in many ways. We see earth and water, but especially earth, I would expect. And we see the jester and the magician, this axis, this fiery, airy axis, we see this axis as being peculiarly human because fire is the source of all of our innovation, basically. And you have to remember that. Fire is the source of all of our innovation, most essentially. And I think in a way it's true at this point that we are, in many ways, a fire-defined species. And this goes back right back to the discovery of fire. This is human beings all the way along, basically. This is our pre-animal, this is our pre-human past, yeah? This is the matrix from which we emerge in terms of physical life and everything. Now, what about the future, yeah? Well, The thing is, I think we have had, at least for parts of the world, can't say for majority of it, I don't know, but like for parts of the world, we've kind of had a turning away from fire in a way. And certainly in the Western world, we've had a turning away from fire. But you see, fire and air always work together. Fire and air always work together. These two archetypes always work together and support each other. Just as these two archetypes always work together and support each other. So when we turn away from fire, what we're left with is air disconnected from fire. And that gives you the negative magician, which is what we find a great deal of nowadays. It's a kind of empty theorizing. It's a philosophy of meaninglessness, in a sense. It's the same way that we have all of these things which are trying to deconstruct everything. This is highly destructive. It's a very, very destructive thing. And it pretends that this is the way forward, but it's not. It's not the way forward. So what could the way forward be? Well, we have had our initiation through fire. We have had our initiation through fire. Maybe it has reached a certain level now where we need to have the other elements catch up with it. I mean, and by that I mean earth and water, and probably especially water in a sense. We don't yet know what this would mean, because our idea of earth and water is all based upon our pre-human past. So what is our true nature? Well, how can we find it? I think the answer to that is that we have to allow and encourage all of the elements to come into their virtue and into relationship with each other. To not demonize any element, to not look badly on any element, but instead to approach all of them with goodwill. To understand that the real meaning of this, the real thing that comes through this, is relationship. And it's this quality of relationship that we need to find. And that will lead us to find our way to a future which is beyond the crisis point we are at present. Now, just to riff on this subject a little bit more, I think it's so interesting, really. The idea that our next phase of development basically involves this axis here, but not in the way that we are used to it, because we're used to only thinking about our animal past, really, or the things that are very basic. And it seems pretty clear to me, I think, that what we would be doing is integrating the promise of human nature into our great ancestry of life, in a sense, so that we become one with it without losing ourselves, in a sense. But also, there's something else here that keeps on striking me. If we go back, say, to the time when we think about, the Big Bang and all these ideas, all of this stuff here, this axis, this, of course, was also cosmic. And before the Earth, this also existed. So what, for instance, was water? What was water before there was Earth? What was water before there was a planet? Well, we talk about the waters of space, don't we? We talk about space ships, because The outer spaces are a kind of water as well, you see. Water extends everywhere. Water is also the inner dimensions. It's the inner dimensions and the outer dimensions. So here is something. Cosmic water. What could that be? And what do we think of as this new age? When people talk about a new age, they talk about the age of Aquarius. And what is Aquarius? Aquarius is the water bearer. But what kind of water, eh? Well, I think that very likely relates to the tarot card, which is associated with Aquarius, which is the star of hope. And you'll see in the star, the female figure of the star is pouring water and pours water onto both river or lake and also onto land. And I feel that what that represents is that some of this water is terrestrial and some of it is cosmic or spiritual. Because remember, there was also this sense of the waters above and below the earth as well in ancient times. There's so many things to do with water. And the ideas about Atlantis as well. So many things to do with water. So I think that our next stage in evolution is very much connected with water, but not just terrestrial water, not just feeling, though actually that is one of our biggest challenges, is overcoming negative emotion. Quite certainly, I think. But it's also about connecting with the cosmos, connecting with it at that deep spiritual, psychic level, and connecting with the wholeness of the entirety of our ancestry, our pre-human ancestry, but without losing our newness, what we are ourselves. So in this way, we have the very ancient and we have the future brought together, Janus-like, of course, in Aquarius, the sign of the water bearer.